What the? Oh my god. Greetings, gentlemen, and welcome to Sea Ice. A barren, frozen wasteland, where the only thing that kills you faster than starvation is severe hypothermia. Surviving sea ice is a legendary RimWorld challenge, but I decided to make a slight improvement. Our goal is to survive 100 days in RimWorld's harshest biome without a pair of legs. To do so, we'll have to embrace cannibalism, exploit child labor, harvest organs, and pollute the environment. Can I survive the life of an average Eastern European? Or will I develop frostbite, suffer from malnutrition, and get mauled to death by the local wildlife? Gentlemen, we are so close to 30k subs, so f***ing subscribe. Now, let's begin. I crash landed on the sub-zero ice sheet, my new home for the next 100 days. This glacial land is rock-hard ice for as far as the eye can see, with virtually no resources, devoid of any life, including crops, but perhaps worst of all, zero bitches. On sea ice, hypothermia doesn't gently creep in. It hits harder than my stepdad after a six-pack, snapping all exterior body parts off in just 10 minutes. Yes, that includes your penis. Upon landing, our first priority is to escape the elements and build a shelter as quickly as possible. This, however, happened much slower than usual due to our one and only colonist lacks legs. Because he lacks legs. If we actually chopped both his legs off, then he'd just spin around on ice like a retarded fidget spinner until he inevitably froze to death. So I gave him one peg leg, giving him just 30% mobility. The only practical outcome of giving your sole colonist the locomotion of a half-aborted imp is time. And a lot of it. Time to think, time to reflect, time to realize that maybe, just maybe, that girl at Denny's Tavern was flirting with him when she punched him in the arm 5 years ago. Lax, formerly an awkward nerd, followed his predictably average career trajectory and became a chief engineer. He's an iron-willed psychopathic cannibal, a perfect candidate for surviving alone in a frozen wasteland, devoid of any artistic or social skills. He's good at shooting and crafting, with a passion for construction. Moving at the pace of a healthcare claim in the US, Lax began construction on a 6x9 steel shelter. In sea ice, you've got to distribute your starting resources wisely, because there's fuck all else coming to save you. If you've got the foresight of a Hoktor coin investor, then you're already dead. After finishing on the walls, we built a silver researcher's bench, along with some furniture so our arse cheeks wouldn't stick to the floor. By this point, hypothermia had already started to set in, so the next priority was building a heater, so we don't die. To power the heater, Lax built a wind turbine. This was going to be our sole means of producing electricity for a very, very long time. Next, he got to work on the one thing that was capable of keeping us alive in this Frostpunk 2 wasteland, a heater. Outside might have been sub-zero, but with the heater constructed, our cozy little shelter was sitting at a toasty 24 degrees. But heaters can only get you so far. If you step outside on this sheet of ice wearing anything less insulated than a fucking spacesuit, frostbite turns you into a popsicle in minutes. Crafting our own clothes isn't exactly a luxury we can afford. So, as any responsible adult would, we'll have to resort to accepting donations. Lax had successfully not died of hypothermia in the first 24 hours. Unfortunately, the second leading cause of death, starvation, was already looming. You see, on sea ice, summer is merely a slightly less horrible version of winter. During this window, some wildlife and trade caravans occasionally wander into the map, conveniently serving as our emergency rations. Come winter, the rate of wildlife drops off a cliff, with trade caravans stopping altogether. That means, to survive, food storage becomes priority number 2. Anyway, the very first caravan arrived, so I bought some supplies from them to RimWorld is a game about creative problem solving. The problem is that we have a cat who is fundamentally useless to us and eats our very finite supply of food. The logical solution is to kill the cat, but Lax is incapable of animals, which doesn't just mean he can't pat them, but he also can't snap their neck. This is an unfortunate situation if you were playing any other game, but in RimWorld terms, this means sealing the cat alive in a 2x2 invisible prison cell and letting starvation handle the dirty work. Before starvation can clock in, however, a rabid dog breaks in, mauls the cat to death, then, with a helping hand, bleeds out on our doorstep. While undeniably tragic for animal lovers, the incident conveniently restocks our pantry with more meat than we had to begin with. Perhaps one of the best items that you start with myth in sea ice is the charge rifle. It's a charge shot assault rifle that deals 15 points of damage per pulse, perfect for vaporizing the insides of these fucking rabbits that keep eating our food. Anyway, I finally decided to make an actual stockpile to store our resources. My plan was to move everything from here to here, but with a roof. Keeping things undercover will partially stop them from deteriorating, but not fully. The only way to do that is to store them inside. The good thing is that for the most part, we can store our food outside because, well, the entire map is a giant fucking freezer. However, during summer, sometimes the temperatures climb higher than 0 degrees, so we'll need to build a freezer at some point down the line to ensure our food doesn't go bad. Speaking of food, a plump pigman fell from the sky. Finally, Lax could indulge in his preferred cuisine, human flesh. Admittedly, the pork-flavored aftertaste slightly taints the purity of the experience, but beggars can't be choosers. In this Arctic apocalypse, any meal is a good one. So, Lax built a butcher's table to transform this recent tragedy into convenient, tasty, bite-sized meal packages. Not long afterwards, another stranger wanted to join our colony, and he even suggested we gave ourselves a name. Gentlemen, welcome to Camp Pegleg. I thought that sounded more inviting than human meat storage facility. This guy is Ironhead. He's good at a bunch of things and terrible at others, but honestly, don't get too attached to him, because he's missing the vital element to surviving in the cold, being a cannibal. It's a dog-eat-dog world out here, and if you aren't eating others, then they're eating you. Before we continue, I have to tell you something. 16 years ago, I was abducted by the Australian government and had a Windows XP processor surgically implanted into my brain. I've been living on 12 FPS ever since. The worst part, every time I scratch my neck, Minesweeper boots up, and when I inevitably lose, my ex said it was fine. She said it happens to everyone, but I saw the look in her eyes. She left me for a man with better load times. That's when I got an Apex Gaming PC. Suddenly, I could run everything. Life, love, Larian Studios. And my new load times? Well, let's just say they don't call me the one-pump chump for nothing. Whether you're gaming, editing, or trying to escape from the government, Apex Gaming PCs has got you covered. And they even offer flexible paying options. Use code WINS for 5% off and reclaim your digital masculinity. Thanks to Apex Gaming for sponsoring this video. Now, back to freezing my nuts off. By this point, we'd survived the first 10 days on this frozen wasteland and researched our first technology, giving us the ability to build a battery, which we also went ahead and built cover for. A trader stopped by and was surprisingly willing to purchase our crusty cloth shirt for 83 cents. Unfortunately, she had nothing of worth. But in RimWorld, traders deliver more than just goods. They deliver themselves. Shortly after, another caravan arrived. This time, we bought 75 steel. Lax immediately converted this metal into a fully functioning electric stove. Now, instead of eating human flesh cold, like some kind of savage, he could finally consume his neighbors the civilized way, lightly seared, topped with some creme fraiche. There was one ongoing problem: Ironhead. Unlike Lax, Ironhead was not blessed with psychopathy. He still retained something psychiatrists like to call a moral compass, meaning each time he carved up another human being for dinner, his mood dropped significantly. For now, this wasn't too much of a problem, so he can still be exploited like an unpaid intern. But eventually, Lax's deranged feasting on human flesh will cause him to enter a severe state of psychosis. That's a problem for the future. Resource management in Antarctica is crucial if you don't want to end up like this guy. So, every time a trader arrives, we'll have to prioritize which materials to acquire with our limited funds. For now, the priority goes steel, wood, food, everything else. I say this order only because Lax has cannibalistic tendencies with emergency reserves. Without steel or wood, we won't be able to build anything useful, and we won't be needing components anytime soon. So, with the extra materials we acquired, we expanded our base to make room for future production. A guy named Shay wanted to join the colony. Lax's recruitment strategy was always simple: accept absolutely anyone. Best case scenario, they'd turn out to be a psychopathic cannibal. Worst case, they'd have 2 functioning legs to exploit. We would graciously use their mobility until their hunger outweighed their usefulness, at which point they'd be swiftly reinvested back into the colony, redistributed as a monthly dividend. Shay was no psychopath, but at least he had 2 things Lax didn't. Alongside Ironhead, Shay scurried across the map, hauling steel chunks and slabs. For now, these steel chunks served no immediate purpose, but once we could afford a smelter, all this early hoarding would pay off. After trading some global warming for an epic lance, Lax decided to dismantle a crashed spacecraft on the outskirts of the colony. After decrypting its mechanoid transponder, we called down a supply ship from orbit. Once crashed, a pissed-off ChatGPT on copious amounts of trenbolone emerged from the wreckage and attacked us. Just a couple of hits from this thing would kill our colonists, so I devised a hit-and-run approach. As you probably figured, Lax sat this one out because, well, he wouldn't be too good at the whole run part. Shay acted as a human pinata, distracting the mech while Ironhead shot it with our laser rifle. This was incredibly effective, and the machine soon collapsed into convenient salvageable scrap. Having more colonists around was really handy. It might be hard, but maybe, just maybe, the three of us could make this work. Fuck! We're running out of food. Sorry. As I was saying, maybe, just maybe, the two of us could make this work. More people came to the colony, some armed, some not. Regardless, the result of stepping foot in Camp Pegleg always ended up in the same way, a bland and slightly chewy roast. Some other stuff happened. Lax got food poisoning from his own incompetence. Some more chunks landed from space, and Ironhead threw a tantrum because of his intense drug withdrawals, and totally had nothing to do with cooking his old roommate. Ironhead's outburst single-handedly set medical progress back further than medieval Europe. After putting more strain on the colony than a divorce lawyer in a Mormon town, Ironhead went to bed. So, anyway, maybe, just maybe, one of us could make this work. 20 days in, and Lax was back where he started, all alone. Luckily, he had schizoid personality disorder, so this actually suited him better. A rabbit wandered into Camp Pegleg, quickly followed by a raider. Both were promptly converted into calories, reinforcing the principle that visitors always add something to the colony, usually protein. In an unprecedented act of decency, Lax built a graveyard to store the rotting corpses. We eagerly exchanged more toxic waste packs for shiny new gear, while previous attempts to trade toxic waste had gone terribly. Surely, repeating the exact same strategy would yield a better result. With survival briefly stabilized, Lax dedicated most of his waking hours to research, broken only by the occasional hunt or by collecting donations from generous passers-by who no longer required their belongings. He also expanded our storage, setting apart different categories for slabs that wouldn't deteriorate without being undercover. A woman named Laveau joined the colony. She lacked the critical trait of cannibalism, so we immediately put her to work cooking human meat. Much like a priest to an altar boy, it was critical for the colony to exploit Laveau's fresh legs, running errands, hauling cargo, and doing all the jobs Lax was too maimed to manage, before we inevitably turned her into soup. Winter finally arrived, dropping temperatures to negative 58 degrees Celsius, turning even routine tasks into life-threatening situations. Out of desperation, Lax decided to hunt an Arctic wolf. The wolf retaliated by violently mauling him until he lay bleeding helplessly in the snow. Laveau heroically rushed to help, quickly discovering that courage and competence were completely unrelated attributes. Soon, both colonists were bleeding out, leaving Camp Pegleg moments away from collapse. That's when a mysterious man in black came to the rescue, Masahiro. What I like about this guy is that he didn't even stop to ask a question. He just pulled out his revolver and started firing. Then he made his way halfway across the map with shivering hypothermia to rescue Lax, who, by my estimation, would bleed out in 15 hours. We were about to save Laveau too, but that's when I realized her first name was actually Skylar, and I have an intense hatred for anyone named Skylar. So we sat back and observed a race between her internal hemorrhaging and the sub-zero temperatures. Frostbite won by a comfortable margin. Masahiro tended to Lax, nursing him back to health by feeding him Laveau. Now, back on his own 2-1 Pegleg. We had some staggeringly ugly Amazon deliveries, though outward appearances didn't matter much once filleted. In CS, it's important to be resourceful and not let anything go to waste. All this human butchery was producing a lot of human leather, so we fashioned that leather into sandbags to act as a first layer of defense. The attackers had quite literally become the defense. A polar bear arrived, nearly lacerating Masahiro's corroded artery after a close encounter that ended in a hail of bullets, giving the colony several weeks worth of food to make it through the winter. Almost immediately afterwards, Masahiro went insane and developed an obsession with corpses. He exhumed a body from the graveyard and displayed it proudly on the dining room table. Luckily, Lax actually thought this was a nice addition to the home decor. Masahiro finally snapped out of it, having successfully given himself a debuff. Unfortunately for Lax, this meant we had to rebury the body. Raids continued through the winter, which on sea ice meant the raider rapidly developed hypothermia and would be forced to choose if they wanted to freeze to death or have their insides incinerated. More often than not, they chose the latter. Lax spent daytime hours strengthening defenses and hunted what little lifeforms entered the map, while long, freezing nights were spent researching indoors, warm and safe from the horrors outside. After surviving an entire month on the ice sheet, we installed a second peg leg on Lax with our sole remaining piece of wood. What I didn't realize was that I could have done this before researching prosthetics. Fucking damn it. This was massive, effectively doubling his movement speed, thus doubling his efficiency. After surviving an entire winter, things weren't getting any easier. Camp Pegleg had officially run out of food. As early signs of malnutrition set in, Lax decided to tap into his emergency reserves. Literally, the very next day, a raiding party showed up, and even a polar bear wandered onto the map, leaving us with ample food supply. In hindsight, devouring Masahiro at the first sign of mild inconvenience may have been a touch hasty. RimWorld is a game full of opportunities, and every time an opportunity presents itself, you have to squeeze it dry so there's no drops left. A frightened child was running away from 2 raiders and wanted safe refuge. We had a few options here. We could A. reject it, B. save the child, or C. shoot one raider with our psychic insanity lance, causing the other one to spew a fireball at his manic companion, wait for them to fight it out, then finish off the survivor. Next, a healthy dose of forced child labor, then interrupt her lunch break to inform her that she herself was the lunch. This was a short but accurate representation of what life was like on the Rim. By this point, we had survived over 50 days of living like an average Eastern European, cold, hungry, and surrounded by corpses. No steel had fallen from the sky in over 20 days, and our massive stockpile of chunks was completely useless without a smelter. So, it was time for a bit of ingenuity. Lax began replacing sections of the base with silver walls, salvaging a small amount of steel in return. Then, he cooked all night long, injecting the potent smell of fried human fat into every piece of furniture inside. Once we had over 20 meals, we deconstructed the electric stove. Finally, we had enough steel to build the smelter. Considering Lax is a completely incompetent cook, it wasn't too surprising that he repeatedly got food poisoning. So, the next thing we needed to build was a nutrient paste dispenser. This will serve as a much better means to feed the colony because you can't get food poisoning from paste, but it does come with the side effect of slightly pissing everyone off. An actual cannibal crash landed, and for once, Lax excitedly rushed out to save someone rather than harvesting their skull. Unfortunately, the cannibal proved completely useless, incapable of building, cooking, and shooting. His only talent was a truckload of shit jokes.
Who are you talking to right now?
Which Lax quickly decided was far less valuable than the meat on his bones. Camp Pegleg entered a golden age, thanks to a fully functioning electric smelter. Starting with a paste dispenser, we also built another battery so we could store more power. Then finally, we constructed a freezer. After the summer temperatures caused a month's worth of meat to rot. Ideally, I would have planned ahead and built the dispenser inside the freezer, so we wouldn't have to keep hauling meat in and out of the hoppers. However, I'm incredibly unorganized, so I just end up winging shit. Regardless, with our freezer built, now we didn't have to worry about losing any more food. Another colonist named Eric joined, who somehow managed to be incompetent at everything. Before recycling him for nutrients, Lax decided to harvest Eric's internal organs. Remember kids, if you have the drive and the patience, you can always steal a kidney and a liver before grinding your visitors into a homogeneous paste. Over the next few days, we studied like a college student on copious amounts of Adderall the night before his final exam. At long last, after 78 days, Lax finally finished researching microelectronics, enabling the construction of a comms console. This is the best and most reliable method of gathering resources on sea ice, be it slaves or materials. The only problem is that it costs a total of 160 steel to make. We also need to craft the orbital trade beacon, which we then have to place within the radius of our stockpile. Desperately short on steel, we tore down the smelter we spent 70 days trying to build. This gave us just enough to build the comms console and the trade beacon. The way this works is that you can trade your items remotely to other factions or trade ships passing by. Because we've been, eating a lot of people. Our relations weren't the greatest with the nearby factions, so our only salvation is trade ships, which were about as rare as functioning legs in the colony. Eventually, bored and running low on options, Lax wandered to a nearby secret mech complex. Once arrived, he hacked a comms console to drop supplies. Unfortunately, some nearby pigs had evolved to the point of being able to intercept radio signals and had pinpoint Lax's exact location, all within a single in-game minute. They came ready and equipped with a shotgun and grenades to blow Lax's fucking head off. It's situations like these that reminds me just how lucky I am to not give a fuck about pollution, because if I did, I wouldn't have gotten this epic lance to immediately turn them on each other, all whilst filling them with numerous holes from afar. Lax killed one of them, but somehow this fat prick actually managed to get away. So, no grenades.
My disappointment is immeasurable.
Lax returned to explore the rest of the mech dungeon, and once again, he was attacked. This time, it was an incredibly vicious baby robot that will rip your throat out if you let it get close. In the initial skirmish, Lax got shot in the chest, so he retreated and used the door as cover. This infuriated the mech so much that he politely knocked on the door and was greeted with a charge rifle round to the face. He backed off, then immediately decided, hold up, I gotta get my get back. Unfortunately for the robot, Lax had already lined up his next shot. Whew, that was a close one. Those little fuckers are tough. I'm glad that's over. There's another one. Not to worry, Lax had discovered Terminator Robot's one weakness: doors. Before leaving, Lax developed a strange fascination with a human skeleton that he found on the floor, and upon further inspection, he extracted a computer chip from its skull. This was a mech-link, a device that, once inserted into your brain, connects to Elon Musk's Neuralink network and allows you to control killer robots to rule the world. The best part about installing it is that it summons a JBL speaker shaped like a Roomba from space. This was the best possible companion for us to have, because it doesn't eat, get cold, or have any reservations about cannibalism. No, it actually helped us acquire more meat. The only downside about this little guy is we'll need to charge him, and we don't have a charger. Lax spent his time patiently staring at walls, until suddenly our comms console picked up a signal from a slave ship. Whilst browsing their catalogue, I realised they would only buy 3 of our items, and we were broke, meaning for all our efforts, we got a total of 42 silver. The only things this colony had in true abundance were human leather and crippling depression. Another raiding party arrived to test our defenses, which, at this point, mostly consisted of one heavily armed JBL Roomba. To his credit, this robot didn't hesitate to throw hands. Lax repaired him, then sent him off to deconstruct ship chunks in extremely harsh weather conditions. Watching a robot perform manual labor without complaining or freezing to death was a nice change of pace. Eventually, though, our robot's battery died, leaving us with a noticeable lack of Fetty Wap music. Rest in peace, sweet Roomba. You served us well. Not long after, Lax contracted the bubonic plague. On sea ice, disease meant almost certain death. That's when yet another mysterious man in black appeared, bearing both a revolver and the single most glorious beard ever grown. After heroically saving Lax from a slow and painful demise, the newcomer, Allwood, settled into a well-earned rest. To repay him, Lax waited until he entered a deep state of REM, then sliced off both his legs, replacing them with 2 wooden peg legs. We were fast approaching the 100-day mark, and it just didn't feel right letting anyone in Camp Pegleg walk around without a limp. With everyone now completely legless, company morale inexplicably began trending upwards. Clearly, the secret to happiness in RimWorld wasn't wealth or stability. It was simply the absence of functioning limbs, bolstered by their new, shared disability. The duo then vaporized and butchered an entire family of 5 wolves. The violent encounter provided enough meat to comfortably sustain the colony through winter. And that's when finally a bulk goods trader passed by, and we sold 100 human leather we had collected over the previous 100 days. Then we bought 100 steel, and not long after, fate smiled on us once again. A meteorite of compacted steel crash-landed onto the map. When life gives you lemons, industrialize and expand operations like a corporate superpower. We used this newfound abundance of steel to build a crafting bench, solar panel, and another battery, ushering in what historians might someday call the peg-leg industrial revolution. Like the dawn of a new age, all civilization begins with light. And on day 100, we built our ultimate creation, a light bulb. Yes, we went 100 days without a light. After 100 grueling days of scarce resources, harsh climates, cannibalism, and death robots, Camp Pegleg stood tall, figuratively speaking, given that literally no one here could actually stand demonstrate, Lax and Allwood hobbled triumphantly away, having built the foundations of a thriving, self-sustaining colony in Rimworld's harshest biome, without a single pair of working legs between them. If you made it this far, then thanks for watching. As always, I want to give a quick shout out to my patrons. Your support really does mean the world to me. If you'd like to become a patron and support the channel, then click the link in the description. Also, if you weren't aware, we actually started a second channel. So if you want to see more content from me, then go and check it out. That's all for this one. I'll see you in the next.